Cry It Out Loud, a podcast by Chasing the Rainbows with your host, Bernice Quisenberry.
Today's podcast episode is Infant Loss Out Loud, and I am here with Jen Canvasser, the founder and executive director of the NEC Society. She has graciously offered to be on our podcast today to share her baby loss survivor journey in honor of October being Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month. But also, we are right now in Baby Loss Awareness Week from the 9th to 15th. So welcome, Jen. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's really an honor.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, for our listeners on here who don't know who you are, I would love for you to share your story, about yourself, your lost journey, all of those things.
Thank you. I would love to. So I'm here because this is my son, Micah.
Oh, my.
And so I hold him in my heart.
Oh.
And I am first and foremost his mama. And that's what brings me here today. So I am over 10 years out from holding Micah in my arms. And since losing Micah, I have found ways to keep him in my life, in our family's life every day. And a big part of that has been through founding and leading the Necrotizing Enterocolitis Society, also known as the NEC Society. Necrotized enterocolitis is the disease that stole our baby from our arms. So that's why I'm here today.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing your journey and exactly why you are doing what you're doing and things like that, Jen, and just for listeners out there, Jen and I got connected because I know you all have heard our story, and our daughter died of NEC, and it really is such a silent, quiet, and just horrific disease for babies and infants. So I just can't thank you enough for everything that you're doing, at the NEC Society, for those little ones that, don't have a voice, and the research and things like that are so important.
Yeah, thank you. I think, like you, our family was really blindsided by necrotizing enterocolitis. We really didn't know anything about the disease. We didn't know that our baby was at risk of the disease. Had never even heard of the disease before Micah was actually being diagnosed.
Agreed.
And so that's why we're here, is right. We're both here so that families can avoid the devastation that we've been through. And so that's why I founded the NEC Society, not just because of Micah, but because of babies like yours who continue to be devastated by this disease and shudder our hearts. And so we have a long way to go towards our vision of a world without NEC, but we are making progress and we are compelled to get there.
Absolutely. And that's so beautiful, because I think the advocacy arm, like you're saying, it gives us parents who have been on this journey an outlet, a way to put those voices, forward for our babies who are no longer here and do not have a voice because of NEC.
For sure. One of the things we always say is working to harness our pain and transform it into power. Like, there's so much energy that comes from the heartache and pain of not having our child physically in our arms, and that really desperation to keep them in our lives and to honor them in a meaningful way. And so that's what we're working to do, is to really harness the power of our heartache and our pain and really pull it together to build a world without necrotized enterocolitis.
Absolutely. And, it's very different because, necrotizing enterocolitis can happen in adults and things like that. And it's not as fatal as it is when it affects an infant or a baby. Jen, you...
Well, necrotized enterocolitis is actually a neonatal disease. So there are absolutely bowel issues and things that happen to adults, but it's different from the necrotized enterocolitis that happens in the neonatal intensive care unit to babies that are born premature or with a cardiac condition, for example. And so we're really focused on necrotized enterocolitis as a neonatal intestinal disease that causes severe inflammation that leads to the gut death, to the point where it becomes necrotic and it needs to be surgically removed. And so, and right now we don't actually know what causes the disease and why it happens, when it happens, why one baby develops it, one baby doesn't. For example, Micah is a twin, and his twin is a beautiful, thriving child today who's healthy in all ways you can absolutely define. fine, healthy, and whereas Micah is no longer here because of the disease. And so that's one of the major things that the NEC Society is working to do, is to advance research that we can better understand and prevent it.
Well, and thanks for explaining the difference, because it is something that I think people understanding the differences between adult and a neonatal, because it is so different with the disease. But then also all of the, avocation, like you're saying, with the awareness, there are no reasons. And so for Brooke, for example, our daughter, it was just chalked up to a prematurity, but that's not really a diagnosis. Like, what actually was the cause? To not just because she was small, but there had to be something else going on. And there's just not enough research out there to show, because she had breast milk. She had everything she didn't have any of the precursors except for prematurity.
Yeah, and that has been something that has personally frustrated me and frustrated, I think, our entire community for so long, is that there's this kind of view on necrotizing enterocolitis that it's something that's just inevitable. It's just something that happens to premature infants. There's nothing we can do. And people kind of shrug their shoulders at it. And it's like, no, we can advance research to the point where we can understand what babies are at highest risk and how we can modify their care and the way that we take care of these babies so that they are at a reduced risk and protected from this disease. So no, I totally agree with you that kind of shrugging of the shoulders, and it's like, well, the baby was premature, it was going to happen.
That is not an answer. Right.
No, and it's unacceptable.
It really is, Jen, because we're in this world now where research is so readily available. We're able to do things, like we've been able to advance in so many ways, but then there's other areas of the medical field where we're just stagnant. And this is one of them, with a lot of neonatal. And I don't know if it's because it's babies and I don't know. Can you explain why, like, they haven't really done much advancement with this research?
Yeah, so I would say a big part of why research hasn't progressed in the way that we would like it to have been at this point is because there has not been really the push. And then that's why we're here, right? Before the NEC Society, there was no organization that was bringing everyone to the field together to advance NEC research, education, and advocacy. Again, it was just kind of something that you shrugged your shoulders at and were like, oh, sorry, that happens sometimes. And so I think when patients and parents and families are very powerful, and obviously the scientists and the clinicians that we work with are incredibly dedicated, and they really share our passion for building a world without NEC. But they can only do so much on their own, right? It really takes families and patients and parents coming together to really help everyone, including funders, stakeholders, policymakers, people with influence and power, to really recognize the urgency of this problem and the need to prevent the disease, and really saying that we're not going to tolerate this kind of the shrugging of the shoulders, oh, we don't have any way to prevent or treat it. Like, no, that's just not acceptable. We're not going to accept that reality for our babies anymore. And that's what we're trying to do. And again, because it has been stagnant for so long, people have been shrugging their shoulders at this disease for so long. There's a lot of work to do, but we are on it. And we really invite anyone who cares about NICU babies and families to join us and be part of this movement. Because I will say, it's not just the families who are diagnosed or who are tragically bereaved like we are to this disease, but it's any family that enters the NICU. Your baby's at risk of necrotizing enterocolitis. If your baby is born prematurely, if your baby has a cardiac condition, your infant is at serious risk of this really devastating disease with really terrible outcomes, including morbidity and mortality. And so anyone that cares about that population should join us and help us propel our mission of a world without NEC.
Absolutely, 100%. And, just remembering and going back, because this, brings up so much, and it's true, until we got the final, unfortunately, autopsy with Brooke, we didn't know what was happening. I mean, it was a possibility, and it was one of the four. And then coming to realize, like, what caused it, and just seeing a baby going through that is so heartbreaking and just traumatic. I can't explain it. And then watching them crash, and there's just nothing you can do. And then they just die in your arms. It's like, Jen, oh my goodness, it is. It just brings up so much, because that's exactly what happened with Brooke, and not having those answers, not getting that closure, not getting any kind of forward with the research. And I can't imagine having your other child there as a reminder that not that we're not reminded all the time, but
for sure. And I mean, it's hell, right? It's hell not having the answers, seeing your child suffer, being helpless. It is hell. It is torture to watch your child go through what we watched our children go through, and that children continue to go through this disease because you know that they are physically hurting, that they are in pain, and there is nothing
Yes.
that you as a parent can do to protect them. It is hell.
Yeah.
And we got a long way to go to make that stop and ensure that babies are protected from this disease.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I appreciate you sharing all of that, Jen, and kind of the direction that the Next Society is going in for our listeners to understand, and
Yeah.
also for anyone who has experienced, or their baby has had neck, and they're a neck, survivor. Please, we'll make sure that we can get them in touch with you and things like that too.
Yeah.
Um,
Thank you so much. I will just say that I feel like anyone that has been touched by necrotized enterocolitis should know about the NEC Society. But
100%.
unfortunately, still there are so many families
Oh
today
my
that
God.
are being diagnosed that no one is going to tell them about the NEC Society. Like they're going to have to go Google us or find us on social media or whatever. And that
Yes.
also to me is unacceptable, right? Like if
Oh
there
my
is a
goodness, Jen.
community that exists for your
Yes.
family, like
Yes.
someone tell them about it. Like,
Jen, let
we're
me tell you.
here. We have. Go ahead.
Oh my gosh. I know. You're speaking and preaching to the choir here because we go through the same thing with Chasing Rainbows because we're like, we have free therapy, free support groups every day. Like somebody just give the information. We're not asking anything from hospitals or doctors. Like we'll find the funding to keep our programs going. Just like educate the public on these support services that we have so people
Yeah.
aren't struggling.
Yeah.
But you're right. They're Google searching. We're running into the same thing where they're Google searching the next society or like neck and then you guys pop
Yeah.
up. And that's how I actually learned about you guys. Like I have been in now, we lost Brooke March of 2021. And so 3 years, I never knew about the Next Society. And why didn't the hospital I was in know about you guys? Like, how can we help to get the word out about the neck? And that, I think having this partnership is so important because we are trying to support these families and things like that in different ways, you know?
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
Surfacing.
no, absolutely. And so I will say, yes, like the Next Society is really focused on necrotizing enterocolitis, but I will say, one thing that we really share, I know you support bereaved families, but we have a book that's called Forever Our Little One, and it's for a family who is bereaved for any
Yes.
tragic reason at any tragic age. And so it's not just infancy, it's child loss at any point,
Yes.
even a miscarriage, a stillbirth, it really the whole spectrum of loss. And so I think there is a lot of overlap because tragically, a lot of our families who are affected by NEC are bereaved because the
Yes.
mortality rates, they sometimes can hit 50% up to 100% if you're at a
Yes.
NEC totalis case and it's really severe and the disease just is so aggressive. So yeah, there's a lot of overlap between our organizations and would love to bring our communities together to serve patients and families in a much more powerful way.
Absolutely, because with us, we don't do the advocacy or the research because there's so many different organizations in
Yeah.
our community that are doing this work. This being specific, for neck, which is something that, of course, whoever's been touched or affected by neck, just
Hmm.
knowing about you guys. But right, and it is so important that we all come together because it's about holistically supporting the family. So knowing
Right.
who the awareness and research nonprofits are so we can lead survivors or let them know that you guys are available to them because that is so important if they want to do that type of work or get behind
Hmm.
that mission. For example, like me personally on a personal level wants to get involved with the Next Society and
Yeah.
volunteer my time because it was something that affected us and touched our lives. And so I think finding the nonprofits who are already doing this are just so important to connect people with.
I totally agree because whether your child is diagnosed or whether you tragically lose your child, it is a life altering experience. Like you
Yes.
are never going to be the same. You are forever changed after whatever trauma that happens, either being diagnosed with NAC or you tragically losing your child for any reason. Like you are a changed person. And so
100%.
you do need to find whatever outlet you can, whatever path that you need to find peace and to
Yes.
find meaning and to honor your child in whatever way makes sense to you and your family. Like, and so here are two amazing, powerful organizations where families can do just that.
Yeah. Well, and you're so right because it is really honoring, processing, living
Yeah.
with our babies that aren't in our arms, we're holding them in our hearts instead. And when we're leaving the hospital empty armed, like, what do we do? Where do we turn to seek the support and comfort that we need? Because we're all so different, with how we handle grief and trauma, and, our minds just do their own thing. And it's how can we best, support these survivors? You're so right.
Absolutely. And it's true, like we all grieve so differently. Some people are
Yeah,
much comfortable and want to be public, and some
right.
families are much more private. And there's no right or wrong way to grieve. It's whatever feels right to the family and to the parents. So I think honoring everyone's unique path towards peace is what's most important.
It really is, and it's about each survivor protecting their peace and honoring
For
how they
sure.
need to, honoring themselves and their baby, and finding however
Yeah.
that looks or navigating it. So yeah, Jen, and I think it's just beautiful that you were able to take your devastating and absolutely tragic situation and, with losing Micah, and now, you're repurposing your pain and just carrying on his legacy in this way. And I just can't thank you enough for the work you're doing.
Oh, thank you. And same with Brooke. It's very powerful, and I feel privileged, right, to be able to honor Micah in this way and to be able to serve other families and be a resource for other families who are grieving and hurting like we are for a lifetime. Because I think we're here because we recognize the gap that didn't exist when we entered this journey, and looking around us and what we went through, and it's like, well, what do we wish we would have had when we went through this? And that's a lot of what the NEC Society is about. Like, we have resources for families. I wrote this book because I needed a book to read with Micah's siblings that captured our devastating loss in an accurate way, recognized the power of our loss, but not in a way that made us feel even more sad than we already do.
Yes,
And so this
exactly.
is a very it's an uplifting book for bereaved families. And so I think that's what's really powerful about both of our journeys, right? Is recognizing what we needed, what we wish we would have had, what we didn't have, and trying to fill that gap for other families.
And it really is. I mean, it's so important that, we've been able to take what we've been through and catalyst this, but then it really is all the
Mm-hmm.
volunteers and people who are behind us, Jen, that really are supporting us. And like you said,
Sure.
all different facets. Because some of our survivors, like you said, they are a little quieter, want to do things behind the scenes, and then others want to
Mm-hmm.
be more vocal on social media, help us, do outreach and things. And it really
Yep.
is, it does take a community to push these out and for people to become aware of what services are available to them when they're going through, or they ever know someone who is going through, neck or any kind of.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
The village is key, right? Like, the village is
it is.
real. And the next society wouldn't be where we are today without our village.
Right.
And it's really bringing together the patient families who've been personally affected, the clinicians, the scientists, the researchers, and the other nonprofit organizations, even industry, governmental officials. They really recognize the gaps and the urgency. And that's where the power lies, is when everyone comes together and is able to share resources and help other families towards that path of peace and towards power, right? Like the power
Right.
of advancing
Right. It
research.
does.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it cuts our pain in half when we keep sharing our story over and over almost, and being able to really give it that purpose like we talked about, Jen, really. Um, what did you do before you had the Next Society? What were some of the key coping ways that, you were really working through and processing, the traumatic
Mm-hmm.
loss of Micah and everything for our listeners to hear?
Yeah, so I didn't found the Next Society until about a year after the loss of Micah. So there was a good year of just
Yeah.
hardcore grieving that I did. And, as anyone that's been through this knows, like it
Yes.
was first like, how do I breathe? How do I eat? How do I sleep? Like, very basic functioning in life. Like, how
Yes.
do I continue to get out of bed in the morning and get dressed?
Yes.
And so it's like basically just like you said, survival mode at first.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
for me, like, I found like being outside really helped me. Feeling the sunlight on my skin, listening to nature, getting outside really helped me keep things in perspective and also feel a sense of closeness to Micah. Like, I would find signs of Micah's light and nature around me. So that
Yes.
really helped. Um, And then I also organized blood drives. Micah received a lot of blood in his 11 months here on Earth. He needed a lot of blood to stay with us that long. And so we would host blood drives. We did book drives to bring books to the NICU so that families in the NICU could read at the bedside. So we started a giving library. We did music therapy concerts to benefit the music therapy program. So it was like me constantly figuring out, like, how do I keep my son in my life? How do I keep my son in my life? And then it was like, wait, who's working on necrotizing enterocolitis? I kept wanting to, I would do all these things to feel like I was close to Micah, right? Hosting the blood drives, giving the books back to the NICU and all these things. And then in the back of my mind, I kept wondering, well, like, what is this disease that stole my baby from my arms? Because like you, it was his death certificate that really helped me understand that it was necrotizing enterocolitis, because a lot of babies tragically lose their lives within hours or days after the NEC diagnosis. But Micah was different. Micah came home and he died from the complications of the disease just before his first birthday. And so at first, I was like, oh, Micah died because he couldn't get a kidney transplant. Micah died because he was in renal failure. Micah died because he has liver disease. Micah died because of all these other complications. But when I looked at his death certificate, down at the bottom, like the prime, it was necrotizing enterocolitis that resulted in all of these other complications. And so it was like kind of that realization, like, okay, Micah died because he was diagnosed with NEC when he was 6 weeks old, and that led to a whole host of hospitalization and things that I could never even imagine, right? And so it was this deep desire to like learn about the disease and do something about it. And I think a lot of families are in that position. You know, we have access now to like all these resources online where we can learn, we can gain a better understanding than we could even a couple decades ago. And so it's really powerful again. And then families get together, they meet one another like we have, share stories, and that is how change happens.
It really does. And, you know, I think one of the hardest things is really accepting that piece, because a lot of us as baby loss survivors, you know, miscarriage, stillbirth, infant loss, infertility, we don't get a lot of answers with it. Like we are told it's just kind of how things are. And hopefully, you know, that changes soon. And it's frustrating with NEC, you know, that they tell you that like it's premature, you just chalk it up to that and like kind of brush it. But realistically, like, no, I feel like we right now, you know, in this age, people want to know answers. They don't want to just be told because it is how it is. They want to know why. And I think it's also pushing medical providers to have to explain things more too. Well, at least we hope, you know, in the future.
Yeah, I think it is a struggle, because I agree. Today we all want answers and we want the answers now. And that's hard, because there are things like you just said, like necrotizing enterocolitis, we don't have an answer for it. And that is terrible, and it hurts, and it hurts forever. And it takes a while to like, to come to a place where like, okay, I have these deep, terrible questions, and I'm never going to have an answer to them. I will never know why Micah developed NEC, and Zachary, thankfully, is healthy today. I will never know that. And so, yeah, you need to find a place where you can be at peace with not knowing some things. And that's really difficult to do. And again, it's not saying that you shouldn't keep pushing the field to answer our questions. Of course we should. But some questions, like what happened 10 years ago with Micah, I'm never going to have an answer to that. And I've come to peace with that, but it doesn't mean I like it. It doesn't mean I feel good about it. I'll hate it forever.
Exactly.
And I take that energy and I use it to find answers for other babies and families.
Yes. And it's true, because, you know, they say, you know, you need to accept the loss of your daughter. And I accept that she died. I don't accept the way that she died, you know, or how it happened, because we don't know that. But I have to accept, yes, she's no longer here. We're never going to get her back, which I have, and that we lost her. But it's like, you know, how can, you're right, repurpose your energy, use that in a way that will be, you know, productive instead of, you know, toxic. Because I think during the grief process, especially in that first, you know, year and two, it really does feel like that some days.
It feels like you're drowning at times. Like you just like, how do I keep going? Like, how do I like literally, how do I sleep? How do you laugh? Right? Like, I think a lot of families after
funny anymore. Like, what is even laugh about? Right.
Yeah, and like you feel guilty almost sometimes if you smile, or like, I don't, how do you smile if my child's not here? Like,
Yes,
is it okay for me
yes,
to smile? And so it's like you have to come to this place and realize that yes, deep, deep grief and joy coexist. And it doesn't mean that you're moving away from your child or forgetting, like that never is going to happen. You're always your child's parent, that you're always going to be connected with them. And deep grief and deep joy can and do coexist. And it's okay to feel both at the same time.
absolutely. Absolutely. And it's true. And it's learning that duality of life and knowing that almost we have to grow larger than our grief and what
Mm.
happened, but yet still being able to honor and hold and process and live with, like we said, Jen. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a couple of things what you said reminds me of. There's a book about someone. It's a children's book, and the character in the book has this hole in his heart, and he
Mm.
tries to fill the hole with all of these different things, and
Oh, yeah.
no matter what he puts in the hole, it can never be filled. And then he comes to a realization that the hole is just part of him. The hole in our hearts where our child lives instead of in our arms is we can't fill it. No other child will ever fill that gap
Right.
of our child. Like there's
Right.
nothing, greatest blessings, right? Can never fill that void. And yet we have to continue to live and to
Yes.
honor and to move forward with the child that we hold in our hearts. And it's we get stronger. Like I actually hate the word healing. Like I don't ever want to heal from my loss of Micah. That's not something that I seek to do. People
Yeah.
say, oh well, time heals all wounds. Like I don't agree with
No.
that, and I am not
No.
searching for healing.
Everything happens for a reason, and time heals all wounds are horrible. I can't with them, Jen. Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
No,
Yes. I know.
just no.
I know. It's so true. And you know, and I feel almost like a sense of connection to Brooke because I'm not healed. And I
Hmm.
don't, like you said, I don't want to move away or be healed where I'm not thinking of her or holding on to her, in that way or whatever that looks like. And keeping my drive going too. That ambition behind you.
I've people have said, "Oh, you were meant to lead the next society. You
Oh
were just
my
meant for this."
goodness.
And
Oh,
I'm like, "No, I wasn't. Micah
yes.
was not meant to die from this disease.
Yes.
Shut
Yes.
up with that." And so people, I think they mean well. They're trying
They do.
to.
Their intentions are great. They wanna take the pain away from us when realistically,
Mm-mm.
it's okay to grieve our baby not being here,
Yeah.
and, like, it's okay for me to cry or share or talk
Yep.
about, Brooke or Micah or whoever, we can
Yep.
do those things. I'm sorry you're uncomfortable, but I'm not uncomfortable, so don't give me those toxic positivities. Like, I don't need to hear it.
Exactly.
No.
100%.
Oh, Jen. Oh, yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much, Jen, for coming on here, for sharing your story,
Yeah.
Michael, everything that you're doing with the Next Society. We'll make sure to include all of your information if, anybody wants to reach out or check you guys out in our description. So
Thank
thank
you.
you.
And thank you for what you're doing in honor of Brooke with Chasing the Rainbows. It's so powerful, so beautiful, so needed. So thank you for serving families.
Oh, thanks so much, Jen. That means the world.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, thank you, everybody, all the survivors who are tuning in. Please follow and subscribe to our podcast to help us reach more survivors and also so you can follow along. If there's any topics or anything that you guys want to discuss or have a guest on in relation to our podcast, please write in. We would love to hear your feedback and comments. And we are always with you, infertility, pregnancy loss, and infant loss survivors. Until next time. Thanks again, Jen.